The government were going to make it a lot harder for employers to fire employees, but there's been another U-turn.
The government has backtracked on a previous promise it made in its manifesto to give workers a load of protection from day one of employment. The change specifically relates from unfair dismissal from day one, and it had been a massive, massive gripe of businesses when Labour first proposed it. So you had all the industry groups really worried that it would basically make employers shrivel up, freeze up, not employ people in the way that they were because they were afraid of these either really vexatious lawsuits or just worried that they would have really time-consuming negotiations with employees. So businesses are cheering it, but it is a manifesto promise break.
So what would have happened would be you'd have interviewed me for a job, thought he looks okay, let's hire him, and then if I turn out to be a complete dud, you would have then not been able to get rid of me that easily.
Not as easily. You would, as I say, it's an unfair dismissal. The employer could reasonably make a case and say this was fair dismissal, the employee was rubbish, but that doesn't stop the employee from challenging it at employment tribunal, doesn't stop, say you're a small employer, you having to put loads of resources into sort of defending this tribunal. So yeah, it's a massive boon to employers not to have to face this.
But a lot of Labour's promised workers' rights reforms are still going ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly right. This is one small part of a massive, massive suite of measures that the government was elected on. So they include getting rid of what they call exploitative 0 hours contracts, so not outlawing them outright, but giving every single worker the option not to have a 0 hours contract, banning fire and rehire, a measure that is actually universally popular, but then also all sorts of rights from day one within which this unfair dismissal U-turn comes. So there's also statutory sick pay from day one, which businesses are very worried about. There are all sorts of rights on maternity leave and paternity leave, which have been less of a concern of businesses, but they're all still going ahead. And this is just one little, I guess, potential bone thrown to the industry bodies and indeed the Lords, because the government was struggling to get it past the Lords in order to get the policy through.
I was going to ask, do you think this was somewhat of an olive branch to business after yet another budget that hasn't been universally welcomed by business?
I think that's definitely an element of it, but I think the reality, from what I've picked up, is that the government and unions were really worried that it wasn't going to get onto what's called the statute book in time for all these policies to be introduced in April. The Lords had been really pushing back in the way that businesses were on the fallout of employment or unemployment, and so had basically not been ratifying or signing off on the policy as a whole thing, which you need to do. So pressure was mounting, and this is basically the concession that the government has made in order for it to all go through in time for the first policies to be introduced in April.